Das Vertical.
Alright, so when I started this YouTube channel, I was mainly aiming to talk about Icelandic politics. Now that I ended up talking about all things Iceland related, and now I want to take this a step even further and try something new. I'm gonna try to dip my toe into the weird world that is American politics. So, as you may be aware of, the Americans have a president named Donald J. Trump, who you probably haven't heard of. I mean, nothing important or anything. But yeah, he's been around, he's been in office since 2017 and is running for re-election, which is somewhat admirable considering that he's quite old. But anyway, yeah, he's running for re-election, and of course the big question right now is who will run against him. Now there are a dozen, 2 dozen Democrats or something like that that are trying to primary to become the nominee to run against them. I'm not gonna go through all of them because most of them are not interesting or I don't know them well enough. Yeah, obviously I follow Icelandic politics more than American politics. Well, actually, I do follow American politics quite closely, but I don't really analyze it. I just like to read about it or watch it, but I don't analyze it. It's too far away from me. I'm gonna talk about the 4 Democrats that I think are the most likely contenders in being the nominee, and I'm gonna talk about how likely I think each and one of them is in actually defeating Trump. So this will also be a very interesting video later on to see just how right or wrong I am. So you can use this as an indication in about a year and a half and see just how great my insights in American politics really are. So this will be interesting, for me mainly. Now, despite what you may have heard, Donald Trump's position is actually very vulnerable. He has a very low approval rating. I mean, sure, he has a very tight grip on his party, but that may not be enough. There are not a lot of Democrat-leaning voters that are likely to go over to the Republicans and vote for him, but it'll all depend, of course, on who the Democratic nominee is. I mean, just a reminder, in the last election when he ran against Hillary Clinton, there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of voters that had voted for Barack Obama twice, that ended up voting for Donald Trump because they despised Hillary Clinton so much. So anyway, let's just get to the Democratic candidates. So the 4 I picked, I'm just going to do them alphabetically. I think that's the best way to do it. So first up, who I think is likely to be the one to go up against Donald Trump is Joe Biden. Joe Biden was, I believe, the vice president under Barack Obama. And how likely to I think he is gonna be at beating Donald Trump? I'm giving him a 10% chance of being able to beat Donald. Sorry, Biden is just not very electable if you ask me. I think it's just gonna be Hillary Clinton all over again. Basically, not a lot of Democrats or left-leaning voters or liberals or whatever you want to call them would show up, so Donald Trump would just call on his base to show up and vote, and they would most likely beat him. I don't think, of course, with Trump having been in office now for this long and having stirred up a lot of controversy, I don't think the backlash would simply be strong enough for people to turn over to the other side if somebody like Joe Biden were to run against him. So basically if Joe Biden were to become the nominee, it would be the best thing that could possibly happen for Donald Trump. We'd be looking at another 4 years of Trump, most likely. So, candidate number 2, Cory Booker. I'm giving Cory Booker a 30% chance of being able to beat Donald Trump. Cory Booker, I know almost nothing about him. I think he's a senator from some eastern seaboard state, but I didn't even know who the guy was until recently when I started to check out the Democratic primaries. But from what I've seen about him, he's just very uninspiring. Sure, he talks very nicely, he has the right words and etiquette, or whatever to inspire people, but his words are just so empty. He has no policies, he has no Like he's just this, you know, he just has this aura of, if I just smile and pretend to be very nice, then of course they will vote for me over that grins that is, you know, the Donald Trump. Oh yeah, he's just very painful to look at. You know, I think his message was, when he started campaigning, was, "We are America and we are better than this." And there's a picture of Donald Trump, or quote of Donald Trump saying something misogynistic or something. But other than that, he's just a typical run-of-the-mill establishment Democrat. There's just nothing exciting about him. So anyway, moving on. Next candidate. I'm squatting. Bernie Sanders. You may have heard of him. He's a self-described democratic socialist, although let's face it, he's more of a social democrat, which still somehow makes him the furthest left of any American politician, which to me, as somebody from Europe, is kind of strange to me. Like, I think if he grew up in any Western European country and had gone into politics there, he would have probably already retired after maybe a successful political career, maybe not, because he would have had a lot of similar-minded people to compete with. While in America, he's sort of like a lonely island of left-wing politics in an ocean of center-rightism. But anyway, I'm giving him a 95% chance of beating Donald Trump. Because I think what would happen if he were to run against Donald Trump, he would just turn up so many fresh, new, young voters and people that have never voted before, because they just have always found that both sides are so much all the same, equally corrupt, equally everything, and don't demand any real change. But I think a lot of people would show up for Bernie because he's so different, and I think he might even turn a lot of Republican voters who would vote for him simply on the economic stuff. I mean, a lot of people voted for Trump for those very same reasons. I mean, he was promising to bring back jobs, which he hasn't. He was promising to end all the wars that the United States is involved in. He also didn't do that. So Bernie Sanders promises to deliver on these things, and he has a very long track record of talking about these issues and wanting to fight for them, whereas Donald Trump just sort of waltzed in there at the last moment and claimed he wanted to do all these things, lied about all of it, and but the message reached a lot of people. So yeah, I think Bernie Sanders would be very likely to beat Donald Trump if he were to become the nominee. In the end of the video, I'm going to talk about which of these four I think is actually the most likely to become the nominee, so don't get your hopes up just yet about Bernie. But yeah, what else is there to say about Bernie? Well, one thing that's definitely for sure, or I think okay, I'm just going to make a prediction right here. If Bernie becomes the nomination and runs against Trump, he is gonna need an armada of bodyguards. There are gonna be some crazy fucktards out there that are gonna try assassinate him. There's gonna be a whole new red scare mobilized against him. So yeah, if he were to become the nominee, it would not only be a very interesting contest between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, but it would probably also be a very powder keg set to explode. So
remember the Soviet Union when it was all together.
So the last candidate that I want to talk about is Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is, as far as policies go, yeah, by the way, did you notice that I didn't mention any policies when I talked about Joe Biden and Cory Booker? That's because they pretty much don't have any. They're such a tabula rasa. Shit, I need to learn sociology again. But anyway, they are so vague in their messaging and what they're trying to accomplish that you can't really talk about policies with them. Anyway, Elizabeth Warren, a lot of ways she's very similar in Bernie Sanders in terms of ideology. Also, I think kind of like with Hillary Clinton. Hillary did have the advantage of being a woman, which I think cannot be underestimated, that it did turn out a lot of women of all ages probably that simply wanted to see a female president. And I think now Hillary Clinton was very unpopular, so it didn't help her that much, but I think Elizabeth Warren has a bit more higher approval rating, so the fact that she is a woman might be much more useful to her than it was for Hillary Clinton. Because here's the thing, if you want to, get female voters as a female candidate, you kind of also have to be popular. Just being a woman helps, but it can only help you so much. But yeah, a lot of her policies, Elizabeth's, are very similar as to that of Bernie Sanders. So in that sense, she does have a fairly high chance of beating him in that regard. But the difference is between her and Bernie is that she doesn't come with any charisma. Not to say that Bernie has a lot of charisma, but he speaks with a lot of passion. A very uncharismatic passion, but the passion is there. Elizabeth simply doesn't do it for me in that way. Like, yes, he's good on the issues, he knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't quite have the salesmanship. And she can sometimes just be a bore to listen to. And going up against Donald Trump, I just don't know how that's gonna look. So, when it comes to how likely I think she would be in beating Donald Trump, I'm giving her a 60%. She's more likely than not, but she's just not a very strong candidate, if you know what I mean. She doesn't have this strong willedness, this wittiness, this awesomely gripping manner of speaking that Donald Trump has. Let's face it, the guy's a great speaker.
And you know what? They've done a good job with energy, and so has Saudi Arabia done a good job with energy. But we are now bigger than Russia. We are now bigger than Saudi Arabia by far.
He's a very fun speaker. He's an entertaining speaker, and Elizabeth simply isn't. So yeah, these were my 4 candidates who I think are the most likely to become the nominee. Now, which one of those 4 do I think is the most likely to actually become the nominee? Okay, I'm actually not sure at all, but so this is a very random guess on my part, but still, I think it's gonna be Elizabeth Warren. But yeah, like I said, I gave her a 60% chance of beating Donald Trump. But now, I'm gonna add one more caveat to this. How likely or unlikely she would be at beating Donald Trump may depend on one factor. Who she would pick as her vice president. VP, as they call it. Now, if Bernie Sanders was the nominee, I think there is no doubt that he would pick Elizabeth Warren to be his VP pick, because one thing you need to realize is that not only are they very similar thinking politicians, but they're also friends. They have worked together a lot, and they actually have a close personal friendship. So I think Bernie would be very likely to pick Warren, and I think that may even increase his chances of defeating Donald Trump, because I think these two together would be an incredibly powerful political duo going up against Trump and whoever it is that is his vice president. What is it? Mike Pence? Yeah, it's Mike Pence. Whereas Elizabeth Warren, I'm not sure. She is somewhat likely to pick a more establishment kind of candidate to, be able to reach more of the moderate, centrist, center-right kind of Democrats, to get more of these kind of votes. But whether or not that'd be helpful to her, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if she was the pick, that she would pick maybe Joe Biden. Okay, maybe not Joe Biden, but Booker maybe. Yeah, Cory Booker maybe. Although, no, I wouldn't put it past her to pick Joe Biden. And if that was the case, then I just can't picture Joe Biden campaigning for Elizabeth Warren. I really can't. No, you know what? Scratch that. I mean, even if Warren were to ask Joe Biden to become the VP, I really doubt that anyone, including Joe Biden, would ever want to be a 3, possibly 4-term vice president. So I'm pretty sure he would decline simply on that note. You know, I mean, after being vice president, you either want to be president or nothing, especially if you're an old guy like Joe Biden. I mean, I'm pretty sure that if Biden were to not get picked as the nominee, he would simply, you know, retire from politics altogether and just call it a day. At least that's what I would assume, because apparently American politicians have never heard of the concept of retiring. I mean, what? McCain, he was still a senator and he was in his mid-80s or something. Like, who does that? Like, why don't these people just retire? Like in Iceland, it's considered incredible if a politician is still around when he reaches his 70s, but 80s? I mean, Trump is in his 70s, Bernie is in his late 70s, and he would be in his, I think, early 80s if he were to complete just one term. But I don't know, he feels the calling, I suppose. What was I talking about? That is some good wine. So anyway, that concludes my thoughts on the current state of the Democratic primary. So I'll love to see in a year or two from now to see just how right or wrong I was about this. So yeah. I'm not tipsy enough yet. Anyway, I hope you like this video and like and subscribe.
Das Radikal.